Hello, I'm Mark, and this is the Fast Track Impact podcast for researchers who want to be more productive and achieve real-world impacts from their research. Today's episode is a part 2. Last week I was talking to you about how to manage power in meetings and workshops so you can spot the dynamics and ideally get out of a few challenging situations. I'm wondering if you've had a chance to apply any of these. Always good to try them out, especially with students. Make your teaching a bit more engaging, have a bit more fun, try these things out in maybe lower risk contexts before trying them out in slightly scarier settings. I'm recording this from Newcastle today, so I was planning to record my podcast like I normally do on a Monday morning, but I had not just one but 3 sick children at home to contend with, so I attempted to get a number of my meetings done, but it was never going to be conducive to a podcast unless you wanted a family effort on it, which maybe you did want, so sorry if I'm disappointing you there. So yeah, I've had a day of mentoring. That's actually, I started a new mentoring relationship as part of the rolling program of mentoring that I do through Newcastle University's scheme. So if you're not aware of this, a lot of universities do this nowadays. So mentoring is a powerful thing. You can really make leaps and bounds in your personal and professional development through this. So have a look and see if your university has got a formal mentoring scheme like we do. There's a good chance that they do. I was mentoring another colleague who does stuff on impact and doing an internal panel, giving people feedback on their proposals. So feeling a bit tired, I have to say. It was, I don't know, that kind of stuff I find quite emotionally draining. So I figured, what a time to get myself a cup of tea, have it in my hand, and record a podcast and re-energize myself at the end of the day. That's my theory anyway. So I'm going to start off by critiquing the average academic when it comes to how we actually manage meetings and workshops, because a lot of us fall into a really big trap. So we're given the chair of a meeting, and in an academic setting, we basically chair, and things happen, and we feel pretty pleased with ourselves. Nobody fought each other, nothing went terribly wrong. We managed our meeting, we chaired, it was all good. When we actually look back at most of the meetings that we have chaired, I generally find that if you're critical enough, you realise that, well, not everyone actually spoke. And you know what? That one person did really quite dominate. And yeah, there was a whole load of people who might well have had great ideas, but I didn't ever give them a forum or an opportunity, or they were too shy, or whatever it was. Generally speaking, you could have done a better job. And when you go out of academia, I think we lull ourselves into this false sense of security that, well, hey, I can chair meetings. Really? But yeah, I think I can chair meetings. And so give me a meeting now with publics or stakeholders, and I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to sit there and chair. If you talk to any professional facilitator, they will tell you that that is their most feared technique. The one place, if things are going to go wrong, that they will go wrong is in open discussion. And yet, this is the thing that the least experienced of us go to immediately without thinking. And then we wonder why things go wrong. So last week I was talking about how to spot the power dynamics in your group. It is in open discussion that those power dynamics will rear their ugly head, and it is in open discussion that it will be most challenging to be able to deal with that. Now, I gave you 3 ways of dealing with some of the more challenging situations, but ideally we don't get there. And I'm going to suggest that, armed with the insight from last week, that it's power fundamentally that we need to be able to understand and manage to make these meetings, workshops go well, then we can manage out the need for an experienced, confident, and an expert facilitator, simply by using techniques that manage the power for us. So for me, I'm going to give you a few techniques. I'm going to give you them in 3 categories of technique that I would normally follow in sequence from one category to the next. I'm going to give you them also configured in a particular workshop that I use quite regularly that I think you might find useful. A lot of researchers I know have used this model to run workshops, both to gain impact and evaluate impact. So I'm going to give you some practical tools. But before I do, there is one problem, which is that you're sitting there thinking, great, I've got some techniques, I've got a bag of pens, I've got some post-it notes, I've got some sticky dots, I've got some other ideas in my head, but actually I'm too terrified to use them. I'm sitting there, these people are staring back at me, and me, little me, has to now persuade these scary, powerful people to do what I want and get out of their seats and actually engage with each other and do things. And for me, this was always my biggest barrier. I'm sitting there with it on the tip of my tongue, about to say, yeah, maybe we do things differently, guys. We seem to be going around in circles, and yeah, it never quite happens. And then I realised something really important. I realised that whenever I did try and suggest that we did something a bit different, if there was ever going to be a complaint from someone, it would always be from the same type of person. And I realised the one thing that they all had in common was that they were the most powerful people in the group. On some subconscious level, they'd realised that in the open discussion forum, they were able to dominate. And whatever I was about to do was about to compromise their ability to dominate those power dynamics. And so, of course, they're going to complain. Of course, they're going to say, oh, no, that's a rubbish idea. Oh, no, that will never work. And sit down or whatever. And it was that insight that enabled me to say, given that you are the person who is saying no, that is exactly why I am going to say, well, we're going to try it. And if it doesn't work, we don't have to keep doing it. But here is some post-it notes. Here is the plan. I'm drawing this up onto the wall. And away we go. So get enough confidence to suggest doing something differently. And when you get countered, realize who it is, spot if they are actually the most powerful person in the room, which is why you feel intimidated, and then push through that fear in the knowledge that you are about to do the rest of the group a service. So I've got my principle, this idea that it's the power ultimately that I need to manage. I've overcome my fear to actually try something out. And I'm going to start with some techniques to explore and open out. I'm then going to move to some analysing techniques. And then I'm finally, possibly, depending on the nature of my workshop or meeting, I'm going to move to some closing down or deciding techniques. The first set of techniques I would typically use at the beginning of a meeting, and these are designed to get everyone thinking fairly quickly, quite broad brush, no particularly deep thinking, but we're getting lots of ideas out. What are all the different options that we've got? Different impact goals we could pursue, different pathways, different collaborators we could partner with, whatever it is. And we're getting everyone's ideas out at this point. One of the ways that I sometimes use this is around objective setting. I think when you've got a group of people together, it's good to know that you are actually on the same page. Now, ideally, you do that ahead of time. There's a process, and everyone is there because they want to be there, and they're there for the same reason. But actually, it's important not to make too many assumptions. And there's lots of meetings I've been at, including ones that I have attempted to manage myself, where I've come in with my objectives, assuming that everyone else has got exactly the same reason for being there, and it quite quickly becomes apparent that a bunch of people are there for very different reasons, having made some very different assumptions to me. And now we're talking at cross purposes, and now things are a bit of a mess. So one way of using this technique is to actually get out from the group. Well, why are you here? What's this about for you? What do you want to get out of this? So I've got a lot of different techniques you can use for this. So I'm going to give you my favourite one in a minute. But brainstorming is one technique that people use, but it's a really badly used technique generally. Technically, brainstorming is meant to get people to virtually do word association. So you're encouraging people not to think hard about this, not to give you even sentences. We're looking for words and phrases, rapid fire. And the idea is that people lose their inhibitions. They're suspending parts of their kind of thinking brain to just splurge things out. And actually you get a bunch of things coming up from the subconscious by power of association, and creative ideas that wouldn't otherwise have come out, because if I'd thought too hard about this, I would have edited that out, because that might be a bit embarrassing. But actually, yeah, some of them are a bit embarrassing. Some of them are amazing, and great. So now, if I am using brainstorming, I'm explaining the rules to everyone. I'm looking for one word, one phrase answers, no sentences, and we're going rapid fire. And I change my intonation, so I'm talking a bit faster. I'm raising some energy. I'm standing up. I'm moving around the room, getting everyone engaged. And as soon as someone starts speaking in sentences, I say, "Great! I'm going to pause you there. Come back to me. I want a one sentence. A one word or one phrase answer. Who's got something else? Great! Fantastic! One word. Another phrase. Great! Writing that one up. Another word. Another phrase. Great! And just keeping going. Ideally, you have a scribe so that you are there facilitating, keeping the energy levels, giving everyone eye contact, soliciting ideas. Great, fantastic, great, go, brilliant. And you get all of these things written up on the board. Fantastic. Now, everyone in the room, ideally, has had something, and you've got a sense up there about what the whole group thinks, not just the one person who hogged the discussion. And you've done that in 5 minutes, pretty much. Usually that's how long I take to do a brainstorm. Another technique that I use for the opening out or exploratory phase is something called meta plan. And I think what I like more about this is you've got a bit more time to think, so you potentially get some better ideas, although maybe not some of the more creative ones. But most importantly, it's more effective at managing the power dynamics. So while the most dominant person is unable to dominate to the same extent that they would in open discussion if you're brainstorming, the very shy, quiet person for whom English isn't their first language, or whatever it is that is blocking them from contributing, is probably going to be just as intimidated, if not more intimidated, by a brainstorm. And so you still might not get the most out of the room, and you may still retain a bit of a power imbalance. So with Metaplan now, everyone gets a small number of post-it notes. Now, I'm basing this on the number of people in the room. So if I've got 100 people in the room, I'm giving everyone 1 or 2 post-it notes. If I've got 10 people in the room, I might give everyone 5 post-it notes each. And I am asking them to then write one idea per post-it. I sometimes strategically give people small marker pens, or I use OHP pens in the time of overhead projectors. What that does is it means that you can't write an essay on it, and when they get stuck up, it's easy for everyone to read. But you can do it with biros as well. I'm now giving everyone about 5 minutes or so, and I'm saying as soon as you've got at least one idea written up onto a post-it note, come to the front and stick it on these big bits of flip chart paper. So I'll normally put at least 4 bits of flip chart paper into kind of a big papered wall. I'll write my open question at the top. What impact do we want from this project? And now someone's stuck up a post-it note. Now I've got a second post-it note, and I'm asking, is this the same thing? Is it something similar? If it is, I'm clustering them together. If this is now a different idea, I'm putting it in a separate cluster, and so it goes. I've given people these instructions, so as they come up and encouraging, read what everyone else has written, add it to a similar group. If I've got a large group, then I'll have me on one side of the board, someone else on the opposite side of the board, and we're reading them as they go and helping people to group them. And in about 5 minutes, you now have all these clusters of ideas. And what's nice about this compared to brainstorming is there's an element of organization here. So we've got 200 post-it notes up on this wall, worst case scenario. But we can see actually, there's 10, 11, 12 clusters here and a few random ideas outside of any cluster. Great, so I can now start to summarize. Now, you can choose how participatory you want to do this. If you've got time, what I'm doing is I'm reading through a sample of the post-it notes, and I'm asking the group, are we happy that this is a cluster? So it's a group that holds together. If not, do we want to subdivide it? Do we want to move them somewhere else, etc.? Generally speaking, I skip that step and just summarize it to save time. So I'm just putting a circle now around this. I'm picking 2 or 3 sample post-it notes and saying, so this is a cluster of post-it notes all about economic impacts. For example, growth in jobs, number of new startups, or whatever it is. So you get a sense of what it is. Ideally, I get a colleague to help me with this. So while I've been reviewing that, they've been having a look at the post-it notes close to them. And now they circle a group of post-it notes and report what they say while I'm now reading some. And great. And it goes very fluid from there. And there's no big pauses while I'm trying to decipher someone's handwriting. And so now, another 5 minutes in, so we're 10 minutes total now. We've got our clusters now are all circled. We've written a short phrase or word to summarize it on the outside of each of those circles. Some of them have just got one post-it note in, and I try and emphasize, if that was you, then great, you're an original thinker. There's no shame in having nobody else come up with such a good idea. And we're circling those as well. And what you can see now is that everyone had the same level of input because everyone got the same number of post-it notes. So the most powerful person who might have dominated got, say, 3 post-it notes. And the quietest person who perhaps would have said nothing in an open discussion also got 3 post-it notes, and they had an equal say. And if someone comes up and says, can you just give me that pad of post-it notes because I've got lots of other ideas? The answer is no, you can't have the pad because everyone gets the same number of post-it notes. Give me your top 3. If you're not happy with one of those, you can replace it. I'll swap you a post-it note, but that's as good as it gets. So we have done our opening out. If I'm doing this with an illiterate audience, then in an ideal world, I've got some kind of cartoonist type person with me. That works very nicely if you can do that. Otherwise, I'm writing up the ideas as they are suggested by people in my brainstorm, I then have to be able to reiterate them in the next part of the sequence where we go to analysing them. But ideally some kind of stick drawing, something that will just help people kind of trigger their memory. That group over there was about this, and that group over there was about that. So the economic one's now got a pile of coins next to it, for example. I mean, it can be as basic as that just to trigger people's memories. So I'm moving to analysing now, and this is now where we start doing some thinking. So we've maybe spent as little as 5 or 10 minutes brainstorming or doing a meta plan. These are fairly knee-jerk reactions. We've not put a lot of thought into them, and we want to think a bit more deeply now. So lots of different options that we can do at this stage, and my favourite one is the carousel. But there are various variants on this. And so we're now going to split into small groups, and we're going to move around the room in our small groups looking at these different clusters. However, there is a problem because when you get to this stage, you will typically realize that you've got more clusters than you have groups. So I've got a group of 50 people and I want to have 5 groups of 10 around the room, but I've got a dozen different clusters. So how do I make that choice? And of course, now is an opportunity for a power play. So I need to make sure that the most important person in the room doesn't stand up and say, well, I'm funding this and I think we should be focusing on this. Instantly, you've now alienated all of the people whose ideas have just been deprioritized, and they're thinking, well, what's the point? Well, I might as well just leave now. So I need a way of fairly and legitimately and hopefully transparently coming up with a prioritization. So I'm going to do an intermediate step now before I start my carousel, which is going to be a sticky dot prioritization. This is not a voting process. It's semi-anonymous, which is for me one of the benefits of this. Although similar with voting, you can kind of influence each other in terms of, well, everyone's putting loads on this, maybe I should as well, and nobody's put anything on that, maybe I should avoid that too. So it's not a perfect solution, but for decision making, yeah, I'm happy with this. It's going to solve a problem. So everyone now gets 10 sticky dots. You can choose a number, but the point is everyone gets the same number of dots. You can see where this is going, can't you? So I've got my 10 sticky dots, and now I'm telling everyone, right, I want you to put as many sticky dots as you want on your favourite ones. If you think there's only one great idea and you think all the other ideas are rubbish, you can put all 10 on one if you want. You can put them one per cluster, and you can put 2 per cluster, however you want to do it, but when you've run out, you've run out. So choose carefully. And again, at this point, if someone asks, can I get more sticky dots? The answer is no. It has actually happened to me twice. Embarrassingly, both times with academics who've come to me who've said, well, I know more. In one case, it was on behalf of the other academics. We know more, so we should be getting extra sticky dots because our voice counts more. And the answer is no, it doesn't. We all have equal voice in this, and this is transparent. Now, of course, people can cry foul if the group is dominated by one type of person, perhaps, but it's not a problem I've had as long as you have a fairly diverse group. So everyone's allocated their dots, and now at a glance, you can see there's a cloud of dots over there. These ones are really unpopular. I quite often hide this in a break, so I'll say, look, go and get yourself a cup of coffee, but at the end of the coffee break, I want you to all have put up your sticky dots. It avoids everyone clustering at the same time and getting congestion at the wall. But I come back from my break and instantly this is a very clear decision. Now, it may be that I've got enough people or resources for just 4 small groups, but I can see that, you know what, there's 5 or 6 which are pretty similar in terms of being really popular here. Well, can I make an extra group? Can I look thematically to say, well, these 2 are kind of similar, so let's put them together. So yeah, there's a bit of discussion with the group. This is how we're going to do this. This is where the cutoff is. And I value the final idea. So I say, right, we're leaving these other ideas for now. We're not going to discuss them yet, but they will get written up and we will have an opportunity to revisit them later on in the process if we want. So they're not lost. But we're now going to zoom in on these because this is where people focused their attention. These are the ones you think are most important. So we're now taking the sticky dots, sorry, not the sticky dots, the post-it notes. I'm just lifting them off the wall and I'm bringing them over now to a flip chart stand or a station of papered wall. And I'm now putting them at my station onto the flip chart paper. I'm transcribing the word, economic impacts in this case. And now I'm dividing the group into 4 small groups. Now at this point I can be clever if I want, because I may know that I've got 2 very different types of people that I want to mix because I want them to discuss and cross-fertilize ideas. Or actually, these are 2 groups that hate each other and that always fight, and so I'm going to make sure that they're in different groups. Or maybe simply that there's one person that I need to make sure is not in the same group as that one other person. But what I would do is, in this case, with that one, I've done that where I've seen those things kicking off, and I've just said, right, we're going to do a numbered thing here, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I calculate it to make sure that the two people who are sparring with each other are definitely in different groups, and you can do that instantly with no planning. With a bit of pre-planning, though, I can give everyone a coloured dot on their badge and say, right, I want all of the red people over here, or I want a mix of reds and blues, or whatever it is. Great. So my small group now is starting at the first station, and I normally tell people, go to the station first that you've got most to say about, that you're most interested in. So I don't mind if they are unequal sized groups. I'll set a minimum, so I want a minimum of 3 people per group. And if that doesn't work, then hey, if there are too few, I tell them to join another group. We can just have 3 groups circulating 4 stations. That's fine. So we're starting with the group that you're most interested in because you're going to get longest there. And so I may start by saying you're going to get 20 minutes to get stuck into this first discussion topic. Each group has their own coloured pen. And at this point, I can allow the group to self-facilitate. I can have a facilitator working with them, scribing for them and helping the discussion. It can be open, so just tell us more about economic impacts. It could be structured, so give us some economic impact goals, give us some pathways, tell us some indicators you'd expect to be able to measure that would tell us if we had achieved those goals, for example. You choose how you want to structure it. So now you ask your group to move clockwise, taking their pen with them. And now I'm going to give them a smaller amount of time at the second group, so maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then I'm going to call time, ask them to move clockwise once again, taking their pen with them, and I'm going to give them much less time at the last 2, so maybe 7 and then 5 minutes, something like that. And then the final step is, rather than doing that really boring report back thing where everyone listens to someone reading through everything that was said, and yes, I was there for most of it, my goodness, when is this going to end? I say simply, on the way back to your seat, I want you to revisit the first station that you were at and see what has been written, and you can now see in different coloured pens all of the additional ideas. We've got some smiley faces, some question marks, some additional ideas that have been marked on the things that I wrote to begin with. We've got the red and the blue and then the green text underneath. So that's what everyone else thought. And I'll leave them off for the rest of the time so that everyone can come back and see what people thought later on if they want. Great. So let me see. So this at this point in the process now, we have a much clearer idea of what each of these different classes might actually mean, what we might want to do about them. We're thinking a bit more critically, and if there were some rubbish ideas, we've weeded them out, and we've really focused on what is valuable about this. So how does that manage the power dynamics? Well, I described how we can put people in different groups. I think you're not going to get away with doing no open discussion. People want the chance to discuss, so great, but we're constraining this now in the small groups and in the process so things can't get too out of hand. What I'm doing is, as the lead facilitator, is I'm looking around the room, I'm seeing what's happening in each of the groups, and if anything looks like it's not going according to plan, so there's nothing being written up, and we're 10 minutes in, or it looks like there's one person who is dominating, or there's some friction and some negative body language, or people kind of breaking up into small groups, I'm going and I'm saying, right, I would like to help facilitate this. And so I lead facilitate, I ask the questions, I scribe, I get everything back on track, and then they move, hopefully they get the idea, and now I'm back to floating and watching for problems in other groups. If I've got a really challenging group, then I will stay with them, and they now have the privilege of having me facilitate them, but actually I'm there just to make sure that the most problematic people don't dominate or cause problems. Now, if you're not a trained facilitator like me, then what I'm doing is I am deploying my best natural facilitator. And I'm going to describe that as someone who has two qualities: confidence and emotional intelligence. So who is that person in your team who is both confident and has got bucket loads of emotional intelligence? Right, can you go and facilitate this group? And yeah, you've got a way better chance that things are going to go better rather than worse. And you know what, if it does go badly wrong and we've now got someone who's grandstanding, being offensive, whatever, then hey, for a small part of my day, for a quarter of my audience, we had a problem, but much easier than them doing that in plenary. I once had to facilitate a workshop where I was warned that there was a notorious shepherdess in southern Scotland who, if she didn't get what she wanted and didn't perceive she was being listened to, then she would actually stand on her chair and talk over the facilitator. So that particular workshop was designed very carefully to make sure that there was going to be no plenary discussion at all, to make sure that scenario could not happen. And then to my frustration, she never turned up. Well, it was kind of frustration mixed with relief, to be honest. So great. We've managed to do a bit of analysing. We've tried to manage those power dynamics as we've gone. And now my final step is we're going to go to closing down and or deciding. In a research context, you very often don't need to do that. In many decision-making contexts, we do. The problem is that as a group, whether this is a partnership, meeting for a research project, whether it is a public or stakeholder engagement kind of workshop, you're potentially going to be working with these people for the long term, and you've all got different ideas about what you should do, what decision you should make. How do you legitimately, fairly, transparently make those decisions in such a way that you don't have to overrule as the principal investigator, chair, whoever, and upset everyone, that you actually make a decision without having to come to consensus? I think there's a false idea out there that facilitation is all about consensus building. And yes, it can be in some cases, but actually, in my experience, and certainly as a researcher, and I may be biased here, very often actually it is in the difference of opinion that there is most creativity and if managed effectively, most fun, in fact, because hey, we're all learning from each other, and wow, that's a crazy idea. I completely disagree, but wow, weird. Who would have thought that? So really valuable, really important, I think, to not try and force what is typically, in my experience, a dysfunctional consensus. So yeah, the group looks like they're now agreeing, but actually there's a bunch of people smouldering with resentment that, yeah, this wasn't what I wanted. So what we're going to do is a couple of things. So first of all, we can try a sticky dot prioritization again. So this time we've thought a lot more, and you've got the four choices we've discussed in much more depth. And I want you to say, well, now, given everything that you now know about these, having discussed them, which of these do you want to do next, or fund, or whatever it is? And you stick your sticky dots, and then you get your ranking. Well, let's do the top two. Great. We've got a way forward. Now, at this point, you'll often get an objection, because people will say, well, yeah, but it's not as simple as which one's most important, because there are multiple different criteria against which you could judge importance. So I may say that it's going to save money, and that's why we should do it. And you may say it's going to save lives, and that's why we should do it. So what I'm going to do now is have that discussion. What are all the different reasons why we might vote for one or the other of these? And now let's put a little box at the bottom of my flip chart paper. And so I've now got a box with saves money, and I've got a box which says saves lives on each of my four posters. And now I'm going to ask you to do your sticky dot prioritization, but I'm going to ask you to place your dots on the option that you like best. So let's focus on the economic impacts, for example. But tell me why you like that best by placing it in the relevant box. So I like economic impacts because it will save money. Great. And now we can see which are the priorities, but we can also see why, and we can make a much better informed decision. So what's more important to us, saving lives or saving money? Saving lives, well, actually, let's prioritize the health and well-being impacts then. Brilliant. At the end of this process, what you typically find is that people still disagree with one another. So this is not a consensus building tool, and actually very rarely in my experience do you see people changing their mind and actually coming together and coalescing around one particular idea. It does happen, but in my experience, rarely. And so instead what you have is a bunch of people who say, well, okay, that's what we're going to do as a team, as a group, as a project, whatever. And I still don't agree with it, but this was a fair, transparent, legitimate process. I had my say, and ultimately my view didn't prevail. But I understand where these crazy people come from. I still don't agree with them, but I get it. I get why we're prioritizing this. And I say I live with it. I don't harbour resentment. I don't attempt constantly to revisit the decision, to overturn, to delegitimize, to undermine. And we move together as a team, valuing our difference and never having reached consensus, but moving forward and making decisions. Great. So really valuable. Now, at the beginning of the episode, I said that I would give you a wee technique for putting these techniques together as a workshop that you can use to both generate more impact and evaluate impact. So I've just loaded up my blog here, and this is a blog I just wrote March the 12th, how to design an end of project stakeholder meeting to both generate and evaluate impact. This is something that I've used for years, and I've recommended it to countless colleagues who've used it in multiple different settings, and it really works. People love this. And it's taking me years to actually get pen to paper and actually tell people about this. So check out the blog, but a very brief overview of what this looks like. So what we're doing now is we're getting participants to say, right, this is now our end of project workshop. We've done our presentations. Here are our policy briefs or whatever it is. And now we want to know what should be our actions. What should be the key things we should pursue from this that would make a difference? What kind of impact do you think we could and should be achieving based on this research? And so I'm doing my meta plan. What impacts are you all interested in that link to research like this? So I've got some policy impacts now, as well as my economic impacts. And I've got some cultural impacts that people are interested in. And we've got an organisation over there who's more interested in particular social kinds of impacts. Great. So we're clustering them, we're prioritizing them, we're now moving into small groups, but I'm going to do something slightly different here. So instead of doing the carousel, I'm going to do a round table approach, which is going to give us time for some meatier discussion. So I'm going to say we've got our 4 groups we've prioritized, and we're going to have now sometimes I'll do it in an hour. Ideally, we're going to have 2 hours now. So you're going to get an hour per topic. And I'm going to call time halfway through, whatever time you've got. So I just mark half time and I say, now is your time to change groups. If you would like to stay at the table you're at and hear some new ideas from new people, that's fine. Stay there and keep discussing it. Or move to one of the other 4 groups around the room. So everyone gets a chance to discuss 2 in depth. I'll have a facilitator and scribe at each table, prompting people. It will normally be quite structured. So just looking at my blog here, the things I'm suggesting, but come up with your own headings, are an outline of the idea and action. So what is the idea? What is the action? What do we think should be done based on this research that would make a difference? Let's articulate that idea. Secondly, who would need to be involved, and are there any resources that you would need? Well, we've got some people around the table, but these guys are missing, and you would need to draw on those, and you need that expertise, those skills. This is going to cost some money. You need that data. Great. Then how are you actually going to make this happen? What might be some activities you could do with particular target groups and pathways, an initiative, some program of activities, events, or whatever it is. So we've got some ideas about how you would actually achieve that action, that idea, that impact. And then why is it important? So for me, my prompt here is I want specific benefits that would arise if it succeeded. So I'm making sure that there can be no mistake. I am looking for impact here. So even if your idea wasn't actually an impact, and I need to give a bit of flexibility here. So it may not have been that, that might not have been the focus, but I'm asking the question, what would be the benefit of this? Why is this an important idea? And sometimes I'll also ask, well, how would I know this had worked? What would I look for? What might be some indicators? Great. So whatever technique you use at this point, the important thing is to make sure that you finish this with an opportunity for people to join working groups to follow the ideas up afterwards. So what I'll often do is there'll be a section on my flip chart paper that says who needs to be involved, and I'll just say to people, before you leave the room, I want you to add your name onto one of these posters if you would like to be involved. I will normally, just to let people have a sense of what happened, I'll do a brief report back from each table. Each of the scribes will report back. I normally give them 2 minutes each, so I'm warning them in advance. I need a 2-minute summary, not a blow-by-blow. So you get a sense of this. My technique for keeping people to time on this is I will set a timer on my phone with my volume up loud. I will warn them it is 2 minutes and I'm timing it with my timer. I'll make sure I'm standing well away from them, and then once my timer is up, I don't leave it ringing because that's a bit too disruptive, but it's loud enough that they and everyone else has heard, and now I'm slowly walking towards them, and I'm getting closer and closer, and it's getting more and more uncomfortable for them as they're still talking, and sometimes I'll warn them ahead of time that I'm going to do this just for comedy value. It's only happened once. If the person continues talking all the way till you're up there, then you give them a big bear hug, and at that point they're forced to stop, and even if they carry on, they're drowned out with the laughing. So a friendly way. It's only happened once. It's very unlikely you will have to actually hug someone, but it's a great way of keeping people to time. So they summarised, and now you're writing people's names up, and great. Make sure they put their email addresses on there. We need to be GDPR compliant nowadays, so think about that. I've not done this actually since GDPR compliant. I've not thought about this. I should adapt my blog. Oops. But make sure they know that they will be contacted, and you'll store their contact details for the express purposes of following up as part of these working groups. And now I'm making sure that I email them all with the typed up ideas. I quite often try and persuade someone in the group to take responsibility, to say, yeah, I'll lead the group. I'll report back after a month or however long you want to give people. You can't always persuade people to do that. So whether you want to make it a Google Doc or let people discuss it in their own way, I'm giving them a set time, and I'm saying I want a report back in a month, and I'm going back and finding out what's happened after a month. Some of your working groups will work, others will fizzle out and fail. But those that do work have come from your group. The way that it's been designed means that there's a good chance that a number of them will be linked in some shape or form to your research. So this will be research impact. And now you've got some jointly owned pathways to impact with a whole load of people who want to make things happen. The reality is they came to your workshop because they're interested in this topic, and if they're not in academia, they probably are in charge of doing something in relation to that topic. And so, yeah, I came here to meet other people who are working in the sector, in this field, and actually now I've left with live contacts discussing real things that are going to help me in my job. And yeah, of course, I'm going to make this stuff happen. And now you've got people pursuing impact for you and with you. And ideally, you help them along the way, point them to your research, give them the resources they need if you can do that. And yeah, you're now getting some impact. The great thing then finally about this is it is in theory a way of enabling you to evaluate your impact. So I've just read down, and I did mention GDPR compliance. That's good. Well done, Mark. It's a bit vague, though. I could probably do better. So now, 6 months later, I can send an email to everyone who agreed to let me keep their contact details and ask, so you came to this workshop 6 months ago. We talked about all these cool impacts that we might be able to do. Did you do any of them? How did that go? If not, what were the problems? And might we be able to help? You're reminding people about what they were going to do, so you're increasing the likelihood that they happen. If they've gotten stuck, then you're offering help. Again, increasing the likelihood that impact actually happens. And for those who actually achieve things, then for those who respond, then you get some evidence of impact. Now, I would always add a little tick box. Would you be willing to be followed up with a telephone interview? If someone's saying something particularly interesting, then I'm following them up and I'm saying, so tell me more about that. That sounds really interesting. So my hope is that you can see now, in very practical terms, how I have taken what we did last week with this idea of power differentials or dynamics, and how we can manage those dynamics and get out of some of the more challenging situations. And I've turned that into a whole series of very practical techniques that manage the power dynamics for you. All the way through this, there are things that we can do with groups that are less literate or mixed literacy. This in my PhD in the Kalahari Desert, for example, we did the multi-criteria evaluation with cards, with photographs, local language words for those who could read, and stones. We could draw nice grids on the sand, which is quite handy doing participatory work in the desert. So lots of ideas for how you can adapt this. Many more ideas for this. I recommend Robert Chambers, his book of methods. Loads of stuff from the development literature, actually. Just go and look in that literature. Loads of really cool grey literature online. Have a look at the public engagement evaluation toolkit as well. Some quite cool methods that work with workshops like this, and this kind of framework that I've given you, opening up, analysing, closing down. But try out different things. I've given you the things that I go to on a regular basis that work for me. But get creative, get confident, test them, try them out with your students, and don't curse yourself and your teams and your meetings to boring, dysfunctional meetings that are dominated by a small number of people. Get a bit creative, get enough confidence to try a few of these techniques, and you'll discover that you can achieve way more in those meetings in way less time, and it can be way more fun.